Welcome to sprint3. We're Team Co-op. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk a little, this is Aaron who's going to be helping us out today, myself, Jasmine, and Lizzie. Today we're going to talk about our brief. We'll also review Sprint 1, where we did our research, our problem statement, our design principles, and our persona. We'll review Sprint 2, where we were doing our concepting, and then Sprint 3, where we worked on our iterations, our wireframes, prototypes, and testing. Then we'll talk a little bit about what's next and have some time for feedback. So, we start off with our brief. Again, we're working with Explore Interactive, which is an augmented reality game that goes through and works with STEM education. One of the topics they have that we're aware of is they deal with teaching energy and circuits to 3rd and 6th grade students. So the research we worked with, we started with domain research, which led us to our competitive analysis, where we were able to go through and find a variety of gaming and educational products out there. And then we also did some user interviews with teachers and students. So from that, we were able to develop our problem statement. Teachers of 3rd through 6th grade students need a supplemental tool for their STEM lessons in order to engage their students in a fun and meaningful experience and build progressive or positive connotations in STEM that encourage further exploration. From our design principles that we went through and put together, we focused on working with fostering growth, which is going to allow for trial and error. We had it be easy to implement so that teachers could do it at their discretion. Drive it home, which the design aids progress in storytelling, and then no previous experience necessary. The product should be able to go through and suit individual needs. So our first persona that we had was Bonnie, the teacher. Bonnie has limited time for curriculum prep because she has so much grading she has to do, administration requests, and then also communicating with parents. She needs engaging materials. She knows there are a lot of games out there, but she wants to make sure that the games she's looking at have interactivity and are easy to understand for her students. Materials should align with class curriculum. So the game objectives need to also align with what the required curriculum is, and flexibility is a plus in that. The second persona we worked with was Brody, the student. Brody prefers working with creative homework assignments. Granted, he'd rather be playing with his friends rather than doing homework, but he finds that worksheets with single required answers are a bore. He'd rather be working on things like dioramas and building models. He also likes working with his friends in science class. He finds he's more engaged when he's partnered up and getting to work on cool science projects. He prefers collaboration over competition. He finds whenever they do have games where there's a winner and a loser, he gets frustrated when he loses, and he doesn't like some of the teasing that goes along with that. So, as we move into concepts that we derive from our research, I will hand it over to Jasmine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So once we understood Bonnie and Brody and their needs and desires, the first thing we did was sketch out some concepts that might apply to Explore Interactive. So we started out with 10 concepts and we conducted initial concept testing, and then after that we narrowed it down to 5 concepts that we could build out further. We thought about what might best engage Brody and what concepts might make life a little easier for Bonnie. So first there's the elevator, and this is our onboarding element. We have avatar creation, which allows Brody to create his own characters. The control panel, which allows him to access information during the game. We have error handling, which tells him when he's made a mistake. And finally, we have the teacher dashboard, which allows Bonnie to track her student progress and see class statistics outside of the game. So with these 5 concepts, we went and we iterated on them. So we got together as a team, we talked about what worked well for those 5 concepts, and we talked about changes that we might need to make for them based on specific feedback from our initial round of testing. So after we agreed on those changes, we went forward and we took our sketches and we turned them into wireframes and eventually interactive prototypes that we could use to test. So we did our testing at the Pop-Up Science Fair. And this was in Homewood. It was an interactive science event geared towards elementary and middle schoolers. It was a really cool event. We got to set up a table kind of advertising game design. Got a lot of interest from the attendees, and this way we were able to recruit some users. So these are some photos of us conducting testing. In total, we were able to test 5 students and 2 teachers. And this was a combination of concept and usability testing in order to get more detailed feedback on our ideas, as well as see if our prototypes actually worked. So now we want to get back into those 5 concepts. So first is the elevator. This is the sketch that we started with. Again, this is something that Brody would pick up and kind of walk through on his own without much guidance. So the initial concept testing went really well, so it was just a matter of wireframing out the details. And this is the prototype. So to build out each of the steps, we utilized Explore Interactive's existing instructions in the game, as well as pulling from direct user feedback to kind of draw out the specifics. So it starts out, it asks Brody to enter his name. So he can type it in and submit it, and then he can select his class. And then it goes into usability, so playing on a flat surface, moving the cards and camera slowly, keeping the camera focused, placing the card where the camera can see it. And then it asks him to add multiple players to the game. And then he can also choose to be the host of the game. And then finally, he has a choice to create his own avatar. So most of our users understood this as instructions for onboarding going from 1 to 8, but we got some feedback that we might want to move the avatar creation closer to entering the name, because it makes sense to put your name with your photo. We might also need a few more hints to get the players started. So when we did the interviews, seeing that first screen with the closed elevator doors, some users hesitated on what they should click first. And then overall, just clarifying the instructions. One of the examples is like step 5 says to play on a flat wallet surface, and some of the users understood this as taking the iPad off of the stand that it was on and laying it flat on the table, and that wasn't the instruction that we really intended. So that's the elevator concept. Lizzie will go into more concepts, starting with avatar creation.
Okay. So here is the paper prototype of our avatar creation concept, which we moved into wireframes, as you can see here. The one change we made when wireframing was to add a feature of locking some of the available customization options, which was based on some of the feedback that we got during that concept testing from students. This is also going to have an additional benefit for Bonnie, because it will limit the amount of time students spend in this part of the game. So here is a quick walkthrough of what this prototype looks like. You customize your avatar, you allow camera access, and then you take a selfie. From there, you would select different customization options and create your robot avatar, and then you're good to go. So the results from this test were overwhelmingly positive from students. They really liked the ability to create their own character, and they had a lot of fun talking about different options they would want to see for creating their character. But from teachers, we heard that there would be some privacy issues with taking pictures of students. And also they validated the need to time box this activity because some students would want to spend quite a bit of time doing this. So they suggested having actual time limits for this process. The next test we did was on our control panel. And here you can see the paper prototype, and here is the iterated wireframe. We moved from a vertical layout to a horizontal one, so that when it was on the screen, Brody would be able to see it better. And we also condensed some of that information for quicker comprehension. And this idea was supposed to bring in the storytelling elements of Explore Interactive and also take advantage of their augmented reality technology. So here's a quick walkthrough. The game would prompt you to place the control panel card in front of the camera, and once you do that, then you can interact with it on the screen. And here's Dr. Pixel coming in to give Brody some instructions to begin his first mission. This concept tested well, and some of the feedback we got from it is that students wanted it to always be visible during gameplay, and they also wanted there to be an option to pause the game in the control panel. And then they also suggested that we might want to shorten the text from Dr. Pixel. And then the fourth concept that we took with us into sprint3 is this idea of error handling. And here you can see the paper prototype, and now it's iterated wireframe. This concept upholds not only our design principles, but also takes into account Brody's need to be able to try again and get help if he needs it. So this idea gives him immediate feedback on if he's performing a task correctly or incorrectly. And here is a walkthrough of this prototype. If the task is to bring that screwdriver over to the robot and you don't do it, you can see that there's a way to get help if you need it and get that feedback. And then if you perform it correctly, you can see that that border changes so that you have an indication that it did go correctly. The results from this test were really helpful for thinking about future iterations. One of the things we heard was that students wanted the error messages to be bigger or animated in some way, to do a little bit more work to get their attention, because without that, some of them didn't know that it was even clickable. And other students didn't really notice that border change as much, which we think is because this prototype was done in completely grayscale. And one of the challenges that we saw during this test in particular, but really all of them, is that the students really wanted to be able to do these tests at their own pace. They didn't like waiting for our instruction as they moved through them. So that was a new challenge for our group, but it did give us some really great insights for future considerations and design recommendations as we move forward. And now I'm going to let Erin take the next concept.
So the previous four concepts that we talked about were geared towards Brody, and the last one that we have is for Bonnie. During our initial phase of interviews, we found that teachers wanted a way to track their students, especially when they're implementing a supplemental material into their curriculum. So we took this dashboard and we wireframed it out to get a good idea of what it might look like. The dashboard contains 4 different tabs. The main dashboard, which would have some of the more vital information. The reports page, which would have the reports that Bonnie could pull on the progress of her students. A calendar, which would allow her to plan and implement the app into her curriculum. And finally, a student's dashboard, which would allow her to monitor and maintain her student list, as well as pull individualized reports on her students. The teacher dashboard tested really well. The thing that teachers really liked was that on the main dashboard page, they were able to get letters to parents, and the ability to get it in multiple languages was a positive. However, one teacher did ask how the students would get logged in. She also mentioned that an app that she uses in her classroom allows her to create usernames and passwords for her students, and it really expedites the process of getting started. And then a reminders list as opposed to a daily calendar, because sometimes they get really bogged down with what they're doing, and having that block of time set aside, they might not get to it, and so they wanted a list as opposed to a calendar. And finally, a way to track character skills such as engagement, initiative, and creativity. So taking all of our testing results, we synthesized this data and used that to dictate our moves going forward. We are moving forward with 4 of our options. Although the teacher dashboard is a beneficial tool for Bonnie, we feel that focusing on the onboarding process would be a better fit for this product. Having a fun and engaging way for Brody to get into the game, it will increase his engagement and make him more interested in what the material is actually showing him. So going forward, we are going with the elevator concept, which would flow into the avatar creation, followed by the control panel, and finally ending with our error handling. After we converge our prototypes, we are going to do another round of usability testing to make sure that the product that we've created is working as it should. And finally, we will be taking all that data, synthesizing it, and preparing our deliverables for handoff to our client. Thank you.